Alright, response video to the modern mystic, I suppose, but he never responds anymore. Even when you're polite, doesn't matter. So I'm going to sort of say he's just running away from the argument. He's wrong about fractional reserve banking. There's no such thing as anything but fractional reserve banking. The argument's about what should the reserve levels be, and a further argument can be what's it matter as long as there's a fail-safe situation. I mean, if the banks were required to have a rainy day fund, against their reserves falling too low, then what would be? Well, there is no social liability. Let them insure themselves. But whatever, that's a whole other argument. But it's about what the number should be. Whether it should be 8% or 4% or whatever. But fractional reserve banking is the only way you can bank. You can't pay a depositor interest unless you apply fractional reserve banking. So anyway, the other point is he's made a video now basically celebrating Ron Paul and the greedy rights, the Austrian greed fucks. Oops, I shouldn't say that word because get Nick all panicked. For this whole Austrian thing, Nick has not dealt with the fundamental, just simple issue. I mean, the one glaring liability of that greed psychology philosophy, that it consolidates wealth, and with consolidation is unlimited power. You can't beat the king if he's got the horses and the men. You will lose. And that's just the way it is. But further argument, Nick used this lame Keynesian crap. Like 99% of the people think Keynesian economics, blah, blah. That's just garbage. The only time Keynesian economics ever comes up is when we're dealing with deficits and taxes. And so people will rationalize an excuse to borrow money. Big deal. It's not a whole philosophy, to use Keynesian to describe what the political parties do is as unfair as to call the Republicans devotees of Adam Smith, which they aren't. They're for a welfare-rich elite, not a working-rich elite. Unlimited ownership, perpetual copyrights. There's lots of things built into Republican philosophy that has nothing to do with, a blueprint, an economic blueprint. It just has to do with they have and they want to keep, period. And all spending is bad spending because if it requires a tax, because they don't want to make any contributions to society, they just want to take as much as they possibly can. All right, the third argument was incredibly lame. Nick was using the argument that the Keynesians are these other people, these non-brilliant people like Ron Paul, the guy who can't even figure out evolution as a fact. The non-brilliant people like Ron Paul keep using some kind of argument that any job is a good job. That it's good to have sloppy government spending because any job is a good job. And yes, there's some of that, but they're not saying any job. They're not expecting no work. And it's exactly the opposite, though. The people making the bogus argument that any job is a good job are the defenders, the Republicans. They're the ones saying the rich people, when they hire somebody to gold plate their toilet, are doing something beneficial to society. And that's the one we know is bullshit. That's the crap argument. That's wasted labor. Labor that could have been applied to something more socially productive. Labor that could have been incentivized to build a Hoover Dam or do something much more productive. So that's the waste. So he's using this argument that the baker's window getting broken, is just a waste. Even though a guy gets a job fixing the window, in the end nothing good happens. And I would agree that they're all labor that has no recurring social value is exactly that. Unproductive. And sometimes it's very destructive. And in the case of people wasting their labor on the pyramids of the wealthy, that's a waste of time. That's a waste of labor. There's no good to come of that whatsoever. But people working on building internet infrastructure or building roads or building houses for the masses, putting in water lines and sewage treatment plants, that's socially productive work. And the rich aren't going to buy that for us. They're not going to give it to us for free. we have to tax them to have that kind of work performed. And that's the reality. And he keeps running from that argument too. The deficit equation has the two sides to it, and he just keeps ignoring the fact that it was the revenue side they broke. They decided not to collect enough revenues to cover expenses. It wasn't the other way around. It was a plain and simple choice to allow deficits, not to prevent them, not to keep the tax base consistent with the spending, but to deliberately and willfully cry and complain that the economy isn't strong enough. You'll hurt the economy if you actually tax people for the services you're providing. But none of these Republicans had the guts to cut the spending, because they knew if they cut the spending, that too would drop the stock market. That too would hurt their business, because now they couldn't sell things to people anymore because people wouldn't have money anymore. So it's such a fraud and a lie. The whole argument that this Austrian model is somehow where the Einstein would have gone. Well, we already know that Einstein had no such delusion. So you certainly don't have him on your side. So whatever. It's just such a bullshit argument, that these 1% are the enlightened and informed people. They would create a world of absolute hell for the human race. They would create monarchs, empires. They would create a world no sensible, common human being would want to live in. Plain and simple. So screw you, Nick. Bullshit argument. Bullshit video, too. I mean, to take 10 minutes to say something that simple, 12 minutes, whatever the hell it was. Your videos are getting longer, more abstract, more convoluted, less direct, sillier every fucking day. You ought to get back to where you were a year ago, and you just talked about the unsustainable part instead of doing your propagandizing for the Austrian model, because you're failing all over the place now. So, whatever. Yeah, I think that's enough. Kind of wet. Still, rained again today, but it's very pleasant out. Cleared up nicely, but puddles everywhere. Puddles. The path is pretty poor. So anyway, sorry, I'm a little not going on lately. Life is trying. Anyway, till next time. Alright, just a couple of quick add-ons. A little having an anxiety moment. Anyway, on this Austrian crap too. This whole idea of just exploiting surpluses in labor is immature at best. I mean, it's childish to think that the fact that the world is overpopulated should decide what an hour's work is worth in the world. I mean, that's just nonsense. I mean, the fact that we haven't gotten around to obliging people to reproduce responsibly is a silly thing to decide what labor will be worth. And theoretically, based on how much you invest in your education and in your skills, an hour's time is an hour's time. Whether you're doing, surgery on a human or surgery on a Lamborghini, it's work. Whether you're cleaning up, dog shit. And in many ways, because of our upside-down world, because we have allowed these Austrian assholes to define our ethics, we have people doing the hardest work, the most dangerous work, the most degrading, difficult, physically dangerous, threatening work for the lowest wages. I mean, completely inverse to what logic would dictate would be fair. No, we just take advantage of desperate circumstances, desperate human beings. And Nick thinks that's how an intelligent person views the world and views the human race and views our economic structure. That it should be based on whatever we can take advantage of, not a better civilization. And until that better civilization can be built, and Nick knows that's a tough one to do. It's tough to get people to organize and plan their reproduction. Until that's done, society has to step in and say, no, you can't go lower than this. No, you can't be that big a son of a bitch. No, you can't own that much of the world. That's the responsibility of a civilization until we as the people can do our own work to prevent the excesses But the Austrian model still, again, the bottom line, does nothing to unravel consolidation and empire building. That is, right there. It's just fail all over the place. Pwned, right there. Now you don't need to go one step further until it does something about the inheritance equation and the whole idea of creating a huge, 1 or 2 or 3% population of the world who are a bunch of non-working owners. That just doesn't work. The highest paid people in the world, they do the least amount of work in the world. That's just idiotic. So, enough of the video. Says I. God damn it. Sick of this anxiety shit. I've been doing it for 50 years. Having anxiety, and I'm just getting so tired of it. Jeez. Yeah. Anyway, my problem, not yours. Sorry to bother you with that.